like to acknowledge Mrs. Van Mater's wonderful assistance. We took a look at GP4, well, what ended up being GP 4.4 and GP 4.6 in searching for which of our governing policies needed to be amended in order to address the recent approval of video recording occurring during board meetings. And after a thorough review, also aided by Dr. Smith, and thank you so much, Dr. Smith, we settled on GP 4.4 board meetings to be the principal vehicle, which needed to be amended, and GP 4.6 somewhat less so, and much more manageable chunks. GP 4.4 has some fairly significant changes, which again, I'm confident that you have read. Mrs. Van Mater and I can both answer any questions concerning the changes we made or why. So I'll just, again, open it up, if you will, to those questions.
Ms. Van Mater?
I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to pull a Tom Gregory on you and ask you to go to the end and go backwards because Mr. Gregory often does that for us to explain things. The reason we opened up GP 4.6 is because if you will look at the red line version, as I'm calling it, which you'll find,
Really,
yes, where it talks about the duties of the president and vice president, and it's GP 4.6 item 1A. Presided all meetings of the board and monitor board meeting deliberations to ensure that only board issues as defined in board policy are discussed in accordance with the law and Robert's Rules of Order. Once we opened this up and we talked about procedures for our meetings and how we're doing things, we recognized the idea, Mrs. Johnson and Dr. Smith and I agreed that Robert's Rules of Order is really procedural about meetings because it's specifically about regular Board of Education meetings, because if you look at this policy, the board president is required to preside at all meetings of the board. Well, that can also be board lunches, it's work studies, and we don't use Robert's Rules of Order in those informal settings. So we realized it has to do with regular board meetings, it really has to do with GP 4.4. So that's why we opened up 4.6 and removed Robert's Rules of Order from that place, because we thought it made a lot more sense to move it up here to GP 4.4. So then if you look at GP 4.4, you will see that as the first item change, which forced an item numbering change and all of that. All regular meetings of the Board of Education will be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order. Again, regular meetings, meaning we're not required to use Robert's Rules of Order in every informal setting, like when we're having a work study.
Go to the graduation luncheon.
Exactly.
We don't board call for a
that's
graduation
right.
luncheon.
We don't have to sit.
Robert's Rules of Order.
That's right. We don't have to sit at the graduation luncheon and do Robert's Rules of Order. That's right. So yeah. So that got us there. It was just one of those things that we had looked at. It hadn't been changed for a long time, and we went, oh yeah, that needs to be done. So, and most of what you will see in GP 4.4 is actually a tightening up of the policy language to reflect our current practice. When you look at what is item 4 now, the Board of Education welcomes and encourages public comment. We added the words, and will reserve time for this purpose during its regular meetings. Because again, we already do that, it's a practice we do, but we thought it was an important thing to put into policy because we think, we're always thinking in terms of policy for future boards. And so the rest of that, then item 5 is the Board of Education will retain any recordings of proceedings as prescribed by law. However, written minutes approved by the board will be considered the official record of all regular Board of Education meetings. So we wanted to make sure that we called that out and that everyone's in agreement and understanding about what we're considering the official record. And also we added in item number 6, the Board of Education will host a spotlight, because we realized that's something that the board does, and it is practice, and we believe that it is something that the board invests considerable time and energy in, and we don't want it to be removed. for, or someone in the future to say, why do we do this? So we felt that that was an important part of policy, and the reason we put it in policy is it speaks to our showcasing student talents and learning, and the importance that this board places on that, and the importance that the board places on its own development, which is learning about what's going on with kids. And we also put in there this sentence: the content of each presentation is determined by the presenting school, but should focus on programs and activities offered by the school and feature groups of students rather than individuals whenever possible. Again, that is simply, that's current practice. That's what we've been doing. We thought it was important to call it out, and important for it to be part of this policy, since this policy prescribed what we will do for regular Board of Education meetings.
I so appreciate Mrs. Van Meter detailing that. It so often happens, something will change, but it will prompt a thorough revision of an entire policy or two or more. So it was a timely change, important changes. It went beyond our original quest to see about how video recording would impact, and I really appreciate Mrs. Van Meter, who put in yeoman's work over the weekend in order to get these things all in good shape to forward to Katrina, Ms. Zadad, and Dr. Smith for his assistance. Well, also, we very much wanted to be sure that the board had these to consider during this session, this board meeting, so that we could vote on it during the October 20th meeting, as is, again, the practice of the board whenever you talk about policy revision.
Will we bring this back to be a resolution and consent?
Yes, it will be.
Any questions?
Unless there are any suggestions for changes tonight.
Well, I read it about 4 times. Okay.
So,
Thank you. We'll look forward to it back as a resolution and consent. Thank you for all the work. This is one of those secondary pieces when you start making changes to practice overall as an organization and make sure the policies follow.
Thank you, and I did want to mention one thing, Mr. Strebe, about the format in here. Because of my being out of town until recently, we put it in here as quickly as we could to get the information out to the board, but rest assured that when it appears as a resolution, Ms. Adad will format it in the typical format and do everything, so thank you.
Thank you. Debrief. And after we're done debrief, then one more thing to do. Was our business this evening focused on activities that will promote academic achievement and the development of knowledge, skills, and character in our students?
I think so.
So, were any items that may not have a direct effect on our goal lens within our scope of responsibility? As soon as I pound this gavel.
oh, what about the other thing you have to do? Oh, pardon.
We're done. And we have a birthday.
Yes.
Miss Allison, Mrs. Cortez, we have a birthday card for you, and I'll just pass it on. You won't see it.